For privacy reasons, names and places have been changed. This story is inspired by true events.
On the morning of July 12, 2016, 19-year-old Natalie Summers and her 17-year-old sister Lydia left their hostel in Bratislava, Slovakia, eager to explore a local waterfall. They never returned. Despite an extensive search involving Slovakian authorities and the FBI, Natalie and Lydia vanished without a trace. For 9 agonizing years, their family in Oregon lived with unbearable uncertainty, clinging to hope while fearing the worst. Then, in the spring of 2025, a shocking discovery was made deep in the forested outskirts of the city. This is the complete investigation into what happened to Natalie and Lydia Summers. Before we continue, let us know where you're watching from, and if you enjoy this content, consider liking and subscribing to our channel. Now let's continue. 19-year-old Natalie Summers possessed an infectious laugh and a thirst for adventure. Her younger sister, 17-year-old Lydia, was quieter, more introspective, but shared Natalie's love for exploring the world. The summer of 2016 found them backpacking across Europe, a trip they had meticulously planned for months. Their itinerary was a tapestry of iconic cities and hidden gems, a journey designed to broaden their horizons and create memories that would last a lifetime. Slovakia, a small landlocked country in Central Europe, was a midpoint in their adventure. They arrived in Bratislava, the capital city, on a sunny afternoon in late July, the vibrant energy of the city a stark contrast to the quiet Oregon town they called home. They checked into a small, bustling hostel near the city center, a place filled with fellow travelers sharing stories from their own journeys. The sisters quickly settled in, eager to explore Bratislava's historic streets and experience its unique culture. The day of July 28th began like any other. Natalie and Lydia had planned to visit Bratislava Castle, a towering landmark overlooking the Danube River. They mentioned their plans to other backpackers in the hostel's common room, excitedly discussing the panoramic views they anticipated. They sent a quick text message to their parents back in Oregon, a routine check-in to assure them of their safety and share their travel experiences. Around midday, they left the hostel, their backpacks slung over their shoulders, ready for a day of sightseeing. Several witnesses later recalled seeing the sisters talking to a woman outside the hostel. The woman, described as being in her late 20s with dark hair and a friendly demeanor, seemed to be giving them directions. Some witnesses overheard snippets of conversation about a nearby waterfall, a hidden gem off the typical tourist trail. The sisters seemed intrigued, their faces alight with the promise of a new discovery. They left the hostel with the woman, their laughter echoing in the summer air. It was the last time anyone saw them. Later that evening, when the sisters failed to return to the hostel, their absence began to raise concern among the other backpackers. Their belongings remained untouched in their room, a silent testament to their interrupted journey. Attempts to reach them on their cell phones proved futile. A growing sense of unease settled over the hostel. Back in Oregon, their parents, John and Mary Summers, received no response to their evening text messages, an unusual occurrence that sparked a flicker of worry. As the hours stretched into the next day, the worry intensified into panic. Frantic calls to the hostel confirmed their daughter's disappearance. The Summers family immediately contacted the U.S. Embassy and Slovakian authorities, initiating a desperate search across continents. A missing persons report was filed with the Bratislava Police Department, setting in motion an investigation that would span years and uncover a darkness far beyond anyone's initial comprehension. The initial investigation into the disappearance of Natalie and Lydia Summers was hampered by a combination of factors. Bratislava police, faced with a language barrier and limited resources, struggled to gather coherent information from the witnesses at the hostel. Many of the backpackers who had seen the sisters were themselves transient, having moved on to other destinations by the time the investigation gained momentum. Early interviews with hostel staff and local residents yielded little of value. Descriptions of the woman seen with the sisters were vague and conflicting, offering no concrete leads. The investigation focused on the area surrounding the hostel, searching nearby parks and tourist attractions, but no trace of the sisters was found. The initial theory, fueled by the sisters' young age and adventurous spirit, was that they had perhaps decided to deviate from their planned itinerary, venturing off on their own accord. This theory, however, was quickly debunked. Their bank accounts remained untouched, and there was no activity on their social media profiles, suggesting they had not simply run away. Interviews with the initial investigators reveal the frustration they felt in the early stages of the case. The language barrier proved a significant obstacle, requiring translators and slowing down the process of gathering information. The limited resources available to the Bratislava Police Department at the time meant that the case could not be given the attention it deserved. The sheer number of tourists passing through Bratislava also complicated matters, making it difficult to track individuals and follow up on every potential lead. The Summers family, thousands of miles away, grew increasingly desperate. They flew to Bratislava, hoping to assist in the search and put pressure on local authorities. They distributed flyers with their daughters' pictures, pleaded for information from anyone who might have seen them, and offered a reward for their safe return. Their pleas, however, were met with silence. The initial flurry of activity surrounding the case gradually subsided, and as the months stretched into a year, the investigation stalled. Leads dried up, witnesses' memories faded, and the case of the missing Summers sisters began to slip into the cold case files of the Bratislava Police Department. The Summers family, however, refused to give up hope. They continued their own independent search, clinging to the belief that their daughters were still alive, somewhere out there, waiting to be found. The years that followed were a relentless cycle of hope and despair for John and Mary Summers. The silence surrounding their daughter's disappearance was a heavy weight, a constant reminder of the unanswered questions that haunted their every waking moment. They maintained a dedicated website, a digital shrine to Natalie and Lydia, filled with photographs, memories, and pleas for information. Social media campaigns, initially vibrant with shared posts and global outreach, slowly dwindled as time marched on. The media, once eager to cover the story of the missing American backpackers, moved on to other breaking news, leaving the Summers family to grapple with their grief in the quiet corners of their Oregon home. They hired private investigators, exhausting their savings in the pursuit of any shred of information that might lead them to their daughters. Each new lead, each whispered rumor, ignited a flicker of hope, only to be extinguished by dead ends and false promises. The initial theory of a voluntary disappearance had long been discarded. The sisters' personalities, their close bond with their family, and the lack of any contact, all pointed towards something far more sinister. Whispers of human trafficking began to circulate, a dark undercurrent in the narrative of their disappearance. Slovakia, situated on the edge of Eastern Europe, was known to be a transit country for human trafficking networks. The possibility that Natalie and Lydia had fallen victim to such a network became a chilling reality for the Summers family, a fear that gnawed at their hope and fueled their determination to uncover the truth. However, without concrete evidence, the trafficking theory remained just a theory, a terrifying possibility shrouded in the shadows of uncertainty. As the years passed, the raw agony of the early days slowly morphed into a dull ache, a constant presence that permeated every aspect of their lives. Birthdays and holidays, once joyous occasions, became bittersweet reminders of their daughter's absence. The family home, once filled with the laughter and energy of two teenage girls, felt eerily silent. The vibrant colors of Natalie's artwork and the quiet melodies of Lydia's violin playing were replaced by a pervasive emptiness. The Summers family learned to live with the unbearable weight of not knowing, a burden that tested their resilience and threatened to consume them entirely. Hope, once a bright flame, flickered precariously, threatened by the winds of time and the chilling reality that they might never know what happened to their daughters. Yet, even in the darkest hours, they refused to let that flame die out completely, clinging to the belief that someday, somehow, the truth would be revealed. 9 years had passed since Natalie and Lydia Summers vanished without a trace. The relentless passage of time had eroded the sharp edges of grief, leaving behind a dull ache of uncertainty. For the Summers family, the world had moved on, but their lives remained suspended in the agonizing limbo of not knowing. Then, in the spring of 2025, a seemingly unrelated event in the forested outskirts of Bratislava would shatter the silence and reignite a flicker of hope. 15-year-old Tomáš Horváth, exploring the woods near his family's weekend cabin, stumbled upon something unexpected. Hidden beneath a tangle of overgrown bushes, partially concealed by fallen leaves and decaying branches, lay a collection of weathered clothing and 2 battered backpacks. Curiosity overcoming caution, Tomáš approached the scene. The clothes, faded and torn, bore the unmistakable marks of time and exposure to the elements. The backpacks, once vibrant with color, were now dull and frayed. Tomas cautiously unzipped one of the backpacks, his heart pounding in his chest. Inside, he found a collection of seemingly insignificant items. A small, worn teddy bear, a tattered journal filled with indecipherable writing, and a few crumpled photographs. Then, he found something that made his blood run cold. Tucked away in a side pocket, he discovered 2 passports, their plastic covers cracked and brittle. The photographs on the passports stared back at him, the faces young and vibrant, frozen in time. Natalie and Lydia Summers. Tomas recognized the names instantly. The case of the missing American sisters had been a local legend, a chilling reminder of the darkness that could lurk beneath the surface of their quiet community. He quickly retreated from the scene, a sense of unease settling over him. He ran back to his family's cabin, his mind racing with the implications of his discovery. His parents, recognizing the gravity of the situation, immediately contacted the local police. The discovery of the backpacks and clothing sent ripples of shock through the Bratislava police department. The area where Tomas had found the items was quickly cordoned off, transforming a quiet patch of woodland into a bustling crime scene. Forensic investigators meticulously combed the area, searching for any additional clues that might shed light on the fate of the missing sisters. The items found within the backpacks were carefully catalogued and analyzed. In addition to the passports, the police discovered a small amount of cash, some personal hygiene items, and a few pieces of inexpensive jewelry. The condition of the items suggested they had been exposed to the elements for a considerable amount of time, further solidifying the belief that they belonged to Natalie and Lydia. The most crucial piece of evidence, however, lay within the fabric of the clothes themselves. DNA samples extracted from the clothing were compared to DNA profiles provided by the Summers family years earlier. The results, when they came back, were conclusive. The clothes belonged to Natalie and Lydia Summers. The news of the DNA confirmation reached John and Mary Summers in the middle of the night, a phone call that shattered the fragile peace they had managed to construct over the years. The confirmation brought with it a wave of conflicting emotions, relief that their daughter's belongings had finally been found, coupled with the renewed agony of not knowing what had happened to them. The discovery, while heartbreaking, also brought a surge of hope. The case, which had languished in the cold case files for so long, was officially reopened. The discovery of the backpacks and clothing, while not providing definitive answers, offered a tangible link to the missing sisters, a starting point for a renewed investigation that would finally uncover the truth behind their disappearance. The silent plea for answers, whispered for so long by the Summers family, had finally been heard. The renewed investigation into the disappearance of Natalie and Lydia Summers attracted international attention. Interpol agent Daniel Youngblood, a seasoned investigator with a reputation for tenacity and a keen eye for detail, was assigned to the case. Youngblood, recognizing the complexities of the case and the years that had passed since the initial investigation, insisted on a fresh approach, a thorough re-examination of all existing evidence and witness testimonies. He established a close working relationship with the Slovakian authorities, fostering a spirit of collaboration that had been lacking in the earlier stages of the investigation. The Slovakian police, eager to solve the case that had cast a long shadow over their nation's reputation, dedicated significant resources to the renewed effort. Language barriers, which had hampered the initial investigation, were overcome with the assistance of dedicated translators and interpreters. Youngblood began by revisiting the initial witness statements, meticulously scrutinizing every detail, searching for inconsistencies and overlooked clues. He interviewed the former hostel staff, local residents, and the backpackers who had been present at the time of the sisters' disappearance, many of whom had to be tracked down in various corners of the world. He employed new investigative techniques, including advanced forensic analysis of the recovered clothing and backpacks, and utilized sophisticated facial recognition software to identify potential suspects from old photographs and security camera footage. The focus of the investigation shifted towards the possibility of human trafficking, a theory that had lingered in the background for years but had never been fully explored. Youngblood, drawing on his experience with international trafficking networks, recognized the potential connection and began to investigate known trafficking routes and organizations operating in the region. A key breakthrough came with the identification of a Local guide named Marek Dvorsky. Dvorsky, a man with a checkered past and a reputation for skirting the law, had been operating in the area surrounding Bratislava for many years. His name had surfaced during the initial investigation, but he had never been thoroughly questioned. Youngblood, intrigued by Dvorsky's local knowledge and his potential connections to the criminal underworld, decided to revisit this lead. After several days of persistent questioning, Dvorsky finally cracked. He admitted to having knowledge of a remote drop-off point in the woods, a location frequently used by smugglers and other illicit operators. He described the location in detail, providing investigators with a crucial piece of the puzzle. The description of the drop-off point matched the area where Tomas Horvath had discovered the sisters' belongings, solidifying the link between the location and their disappearance. Armed with this new information, Youngblood and the Slovakian police focused their attention on a woman named Petra Koller. Koller, a known associate of Dvorsky, had a history of petty crime and had been identified by several witnesses as the woman seen talking to the Summers sisters outside the hostel on the day of their disappearance. Koller's name had been mentioned in the initial investigation, but she had never been considered a serious suspect. Youngblood, however, saw her as a potential key to unlocking the mystery surrounding the sisters' disappearance. He believed that Koller, with her connections to Dvorsky and her knowledge of the local area, could provide valuable insights into the events of that fateful day. The investigation, once a cold case gathering dust in the archives of the Bratislava Police Department, now had a renewed focus, a tangible lead that offered a glimmer of hope in the long search for truth and justice. The net was closing in on Petra Koller, and with her, the potential to uncover the dark secret behind the disappearance of Natalie and Lydia Summers. The interrogation of Petra Koller was a tense and protracted affair. Initially, Koller denied any involvement in the disappearance of Natalie and Lydia Summers, claiming she had simply given them directions to a local tourist attraction and had not seen them since. However, faced with mounting evidence, including eyewitness testimonies, Dvorsky's confession, and her own documented association with known criminals, Koller's resolve began to crumble. Interpol agent Youngblood, employing a combination of empathy and strategic questioning, slowly chipped away at her defenses. He presented her with the recovered belongings, the faded photographs of the sisters, and the DNA evidence linking her to the scene where the items were found. He painted a picture of two young women, full of life and dreams, whose journey had been tragically cut short. He appealed to her conscience, urging her to provide the Summers family with the answers they so desperately sought. After hours of intense questioning, Petra Koller finally broke down. She confessed to having lured Natalie and Lydia Summers away from the hostel under the pretense of showing them a hidden waterfall. She admitted that she had been working as a recruiter for a human trafficking ring operating in the Bratislava area. The ring, she revealed, preyed on vulnerable tourists, luring them with promises of adventure and then delivering them into the hands of traffickers. Koller's confession provided a chilling reconstruction of the events leading up to the sisters' disappearance. She described how she had befriended the sisters at the hostel, gaining their trust with her friendly demeanor and her knowledge of the local area. She had offered to take them to a secluded waterfall, a place off the beaten tourist path, promising them a unique and unforgettable experience. The sisters, eager to explore the hidden beauty of Slovakia, readily agreed. Koller led the sisters to a pre-arranged meeting point in the woods, the same location where their belongings would be found 9 years later. There, they were met by two men, whom Koller identified as members of the trafficking ring. The men, she claimed, were connected to corrupt police officers who facilitated their operations and ensured their impunity. The sisters, realizing they had been deceived, tried to escape, but they were quickly overpowered and forced into a waiting vehicle. Koller admitted to receiving a substantial sum of money for delivering the sisters to the traffickers. She claimed to have no knowledge of their subsequent fate, insisting that her involvement ended at the drop-off point. However, she revealed a crucial detail that would shed light on the disposal of the sisters' belongings years later. She stated that the corrupt officers, fearing that the discovery of the items might lead investigators back to them, had orchestrated the disposal of the evidence years after the initial crime. This explained the relatively recent discovery of the backpacks and clothing. Petra Koller's confession sent shockwaves through the investigation. It confirmed the long-held suspicion that human trafficking had played a role in the sisters' disappearance. It also exposed a network of corruption within the Bratislava Police Department, a revelation that would have far-reaching consequences. For the Summers family, Kollar's confession was a devastating blow. It confirmed their worst fears, shattering the lingering hope that their daughters might still be alive. The news, while providing a semblance of closure, also reopened the deep wounds of grief, forcing them to confront the horrific reality of what had happened to Natalie and Lydia. The confession, however, also brought a sense of resolve. They were determined to see justice served, not only for their daughters but for all the other victims who had fallen prey to the trafficking ring and the corrupt officers who had enabled their crimes. The breakthrough in the case, while painful, marked a turning point in the long search for truth. It paved the way for the arrest of those responsible and brought the Summers family one step closer to finding the justice they so desperately craved. Petra Kollar's confession ignited a flurry of activity within the Slovakian justice system. The names she provided, coupled with the information gleaned from Marek Dvorsky and corroborated by renewed forensic analysis of old case files, led to the arrest of several former police officers. These officers, once entrusted with upholding the law, were now exposed as accomplices in a horrific crime, their complicity allowing a trafficking ring to operate with impunity for years. The arrests sent shockwaves through Slovakian society, eroding public trust in law enforcement and sparking widespread calls for reform. The legal proceedings that followed were complex and emotionally charged. Petra Kollar, facing charges of kidnapping and conspiracy to traffic human beings, agreed to cooperate with the prosecution in exchange for a reduced sentence. Her testimony, while harrowing, provided crucial evidence against the former police officers. The officers, however, maintained their innocence, claiming they had been falsely accused and that Kollar's testimony was unreliable. The trial, which captivated the nation, exposed the intricate web of corruption that had allowed the trafficking ring to flourish. Evidence presented in court revealed a system of bribes, intimidation, and cover-ups that reached the highest levels of the Bratislava Police Department. Financial records, phone logs, and witness testimonies painted a damning picture of a police force compromised by greed and a disregard for human life. The verdict, when it finally came, was a partial victory for justice. Several of the former officers were found guilty of various charges, including obstruction of justice, accepting bribes, and aiding and abetting a criminal organization. They received lengthy prison sentences, a symbolic gesture of accountability for their role in the tragedy. However, the mastermind behind the trafficking ring remained elusive, a shadowy figure whose identity remained shrouded in mystery. The lack of a definitive conclusion regarding the ringleader left a lingering sense of frustration for the Summers family and the investigators, a reminder that the fight for justice was far from over. Despite the convictions, the most agonizing question remained unanswered: what had happened to Natalie and Lydia? Petra Kollar's testimony had shed light on the initial stages of their abduction, but their ultimate fate remained a mystery. Extensive searches of the forested areas surrounding Bratislava, guided by information provided by Kollar and Dvorsky, yielded no results. The sisters' bodies were never found, leaving the Summers family without the closure they so desperately craved. The ongoing search for their remains became a symbol of their unwavering determination to bring their daughters home, to finally lay them to rest and honor their memory. Arya Keene, a family consultant specializing in trauma and grief counseling, played a crucial role in supporting the Summers family throughout the ordeal. Keene provided emotional support, helping them navigate the complex legal proceedings, the media scrutiny, and the emotional roller coaster of hope and despair. She helped them find ways to cope with the ambiguity surrounding their daughter's fate, encouraging them to focus on preserving their memories and finding meaning in their loss. Keene's support was invaluable in helping the Summers family navigate the darkest chapters of their lives and find a path towards healing. The case of the missing Summers sisters had a profound impact on Slovakian society. It exposed the vulnerability of tourists to predatory criminals and highlighted the devastating consequences of human trafficking. The revelations of police corruption shook the foundations of law enforcement, leading to calls for increased transparency and accountability. The case also underscored the importance of international cooperation in combating transnational crime. The collaboration between Interpol and Slovakian authorities demonstrated the power of shared resources and expertise in tackling complex criminal investigations. The case became a catalyst for change, prompting reforms within the Slovakian police force and raising awareness about the pervasive threat of human trafficking. For John and Mary Summers, the fight for justice continues. They remain committed to keeping Natalie and Lydia's memory alive, advocating for stronger anti-trafficking measures and supporting other families who have experienced similar tragedies. They have established a foundation in their daughters' names, dedicated to raising awareness about human trafficking and providing support to victims and their families. Their unwavering determination to seek justice, to honor their daughters' lives, and to prevent other families from enduring the same unimaginable pain has transformed their personal tragedy into a powerful force for change. The case of Natalie and Lydia Summers serves as a stark reminder of the dark underbelly of human trafficking, the devastating impact it has on families, and the crucial importance of international cooperation in combating this global scourge. The search for answers, for justice, and for the remains of two young women who dreamed of seeing the world continues, a testament to the enduring power of love, resilience, and the unwavering pursuit of truth.